The Tale of Princess Kaguya is a Studio Ghibli film, and as you know, Hayao Miyazaki, after he made The Wind Rises, that was his swan song. He was saying he was going to retire, and so it kind of there was a question about, and there is still a question about what's going to happen to Studio Ghibli, whether or not they are going to carry on. They've been talking about shutting down the production arm. Anyway, meanwhile, the co-founder of the studio, Isao Takahata, has delivered this extraordinary film which he's been working on for 8 years and which was nominated for the Best Animated Feature Oscar, in which it lost out to, interestingly enough, the anime-inflected Big Hero 6. The story is based on a famous legend, dates back to the 10th century, which is essentially, the simplest way of describing it is, there's a woodcutter who is cutting bamboo, who finds in a bamboo stalk a tiny glowing little creature, almost like a Thumbelina creature, which then turns into a baby, which is raised by him and his wife. He believes that she's a princess, and he's sort of made to think this more by the fact that equally magically gold and fine linen start turning up in the same bamboo stalks. So she goes, her friends call her Takanoko, which means little bamboo because of the speed with which she grows. But he believes that she's worthy of more, and he takes her to the city, takes her to the capital, where she learns to become a society lady, and where she is then basically attempted to be wooed by suitors to whom she sets effectively impossible tasks, because she doesn't really want to be in the city. What she wants is the earthly paradise, the sort of the idyllic, Eden-like childhood that she had growing up in this rural surroundings, in this sort of really, wonderfully, you can feel the mud, you can feel the streams, you can feel the grass, you can feel the bamboo stalks, and she longs for that. And of course, it turns out, as the story progresses, that actually what she's longing for is a return, because she's a moon child. She's something ethereal and something strange. We know that for a fact, because, as I said, she was discovered at the beginning in this piece of bamboo. And the movie is, if you're a fan of Hayao Miyazaki's films, the style is very, very different. It's kind of charcoal strokes and watercolors, and the animation is much more impressionistic, much more expressionistic, much more to do with suggestion than it is to do with actually clearly defining things. An awful lot of it is actually left rather wonderfully to the imagination. You get this sense of it's deliberately calling your attention back to the age-old history of the art which they are using, and it's utterly engaging. It's strangely magical. There are moments in it. There's a scene, and I know every critic who's reviewed the film has referred to this. There is a scene very early on in which the young baby learns to crawl, learns to jump by watching frogs, this pair of frogs jumping along on the floor, and she sort of starts to mimic their actions, and it's extraordinary. It's an absolutely beautifully rendered version of the motion of the motion and the emotion of childhood, just done with these very simple strokes, very simple lines, everything to do with suggestion, everything to do with it's what you allow the imagination to fill in. Of course, Kaguya falls in love with this world, and of course she does, because with these wonderful watercolors, with this really tactile sense of the world, of course she falls in love with it. The story itself is profound and melancholic and moves towards a third act, which in other hands could easily have fallen over into something that was just simply silly, simply sort of weird and strange and doesn't work. But there is this sort of lyrical folk music playing through, which kind of prepares us for what's to come. So even when it becomes completely outlandish towards the end, we're totally swept up in it. There are stories that it's been reported that it's Isao Takahata's last film. He took 8 years to make it. He's a late septuagenarian, but I think we take any of these stories of people's final films with a pinch of salt. Miyazaki had, of course, said that he was going to retire before, and then of course, he ended up making The Wind Rises, which is such a wonderful piece. Actually, he made several films because he said he was going to retire about 10 years ago. I saw it in the Japanese version. There is a dubbed version. There is an English dubbed version. Obviously, not for this kind of thing. Not everybody wants to see subtitles because younger viewers can't read them. And I know some people do aren't crazy about subtitles anyway. For me, I thought the subtitle to the Japanese language original was particularly terrific. But it doesn't matter which language you see it in, because the language of the visuals are universal, and it's a really wonderful, evocative film that causes you to engage your imagination and to sink yourself into this world willingly and knowingly, and it has real beauty and real joy.